Welcome to another episode of the Patio Pondering Podcast. This is a solo episode that will drop while I'm advising a group of Boy Scouts in the backcountry at Philmont Scout Ranch. Most of us spend our lives looking at things through the 10x zoom lens. We are focused on the moment directly in front of us, the animal in the fitting chute, the Eagle Scout project that needs to get finished, the backpacking trek that starts in a few days. And when you are zoomed in that closely, sometimes the obvious thing to do is to step in, fix a problem, give the answer, show someone the right way to do it. But lately, I have had an opportunity to look at several different parts of my life through more of a 0.6 lens, a bird's eye view. And from that wider perspective, I started seeing that the same pattern in places that, on the surface, don't have much in common. You showing livestock, a 17-year-old leading his Eagle Scout project, and 9 young men preparing for a trek at Philmont. In all 3 cases, adults say we want young people to learn. We want them to make decisions. We want them to lead. But I wonder if sometimes the hardest part for us as adults is actually letting them do it. Because there is a difference between teaching and doing, between supporting and taking over, between preparing young people for an experience and trying to control the experience for them. And maybe the question we need to ask ourselves isn't, could I do this better? Of course we probably could. Maybe the better question is, who needs to be doing this? I've thought about this episode for quite a while. And it's just not recently, just not back to the county fair that occurred a couple weeks ago. It's been stewing and letting the juices come out of the marrow of my thoughts quite a bit lately. And I saw some things at the county fair that happened at probably every county fair, and they happened at our county fair in the past. And we have to think back to 4-H, FFA, and livestock show, and they're supposed to help develop the youth. The child, the youngster, the teenager. And it's not just about the animal. We hear it all the time when proponents of serious livestock showing say, hey, we're not here showing livestock, we're raising children. That's a great premise. But the line that we cross far too often in the livestock showing ring is when the parents take over. The adults take over. And they tell the youth what to do, and not allow the youth to make decisions on their own. Now, there's time to do that. A 9-year-old doesn't know about supplements and mixing feed and making sure that you weigh the feed and not just throw a scoop in. But that 18-year-old better know some stuff. And we think about what we see. We see parents making every feed decision. Adults doing all the feeding because they can do it better. I have to admit, I was guilty of that in the past. When it comes to clipping sheep, I think I'm pretty good at it. My youngest son actually, Jolly, is getting a lot better at it. But he hasn't had the experience, so he's getting better. And then the other one that I wrote about after something that prompted me at the county fair was coaching from the sideline. Not trusting that our children that have been practicing with those animals all summer, all winter, in preparation for the show, actually know what to do with that lamb or that steer, that pig when they get in the ring. And one of the things I see in TikTok in particular is the typical show jock, 40, 50-something. He's got his flat brim on. He's got his Columbia fishing shirt on, shorts. Shirt's untucked. Might have a bit of chew in his mouth. Talking about how, here's what we do with our project, and here's how I feed the pigs, and here's how we do it, and here's what we do. And I can't help but think, where in the world are your kids? Where's that youth that is supposed to be doing what you're bragging about doing? And I guess if the only objective is to win and get that $25 purple banner to hang on the wall, then the adult doing the work is probably the best intervention. But is that the best decision for the youth? Sure, they'll have a trophy on the wall and they'll get a few pictures with the banner as backdrop. But isn't the imperfect decision by the youth so much more valuable to the youth and their growing than a perfect decision by we adults? And this becomes even more obvious when we consider that we claim the young person is supposed to be the leader. And as we think about other places where we can allow children, specifically scouts, no longer just boys, but scouts, to be leaders as senior patrol leaders, and in particular, leading an Eagle Scout project. Now, for some of you that don't know, Eagle Scout project is the penultimate task for a scout. It is where the scout works with an organization outside of Boy Scouts to do something that benefits that organization. Mulching a trail, benches at a park, plants at a nursing home. The youth is the one that leads. The youth is the one that decides what the project ultimately is with input from the outside organization. The youth coordinates getting everything, and then the youth has to present their plan to a committee and then conduct the plan. Now, there's a lot of adults that are involved, especially if you're using power tools or you got some construction involved or you need to coordinate delivery of product. So I'm not saying this is just for the Eagle Scout, but the Eagle Scout is supposed to be leading. And a lot of times I see the adults say, yep, this is what the kids got to do. But then I hear, as I'm helping from the sideline, no, you need to do it this way. Or, that's not what we talked about when we talked about this project. Or in some cases, you get the condescending comments from leaders, parents, saying, obviously my instructions weren't good enough for you to understand. And we see the same thing in the workplace. Those condescending comments, the leader stepping in saying, I don't want you to do it that way. I had that happen to me, and it emasculated a member of the executive team. What we were talking about is not important, but we had a Zoom meeting with many people. Half the executive team, nutrition team, production. A lot of people were on this because it was in COVID, so we were worrying about supply of ingredients. And about halfway through the meeting, the president of the company chimes in. This is really great conversation, but that's not the objective, and that's not what I want you guys to be doing. And you could see the leader of the meeting, who happened to be a former wrestler, big man, wilt. And the other thing that happened, we shut up. We shut down. Because we were not allowed to do what we were charged with doing. Now, if we think back to that youth, if we were to undercut their responsibility of leadership because we adults know better, then what lesson is that Eagle Scout getting? The lesson is, I'll start something and Dad or Scoutmaster or Jim or somebody else will take over and do it, and I can just sit back and take the credit. That's not the lesson we want. That's not the type of individual we want making voting decisions, being a taxpayer, helping our society grow. And I think back to how I helped this past weekend. And I stepped in and did some things because I was asked to do it, and I took over that part of it because I was charged to do that. But there were other times I stood back and watched. And the thing I needed to remember that by me stepping back and watching, I was not abandoning the Eagle Scout. I wasn't making the project last any longer. I was stepping back to watch and wait until I was given a new task. Because, after all, I was just labor. And by me stepping back, and not just in this situation with the Eagle Scout project, but in other cases, I gave the leader room to communicate imperfectly, to make decisions, adjust, and frankly, make a mistake. Because like being in the show ring and preparing an animal, The Eagle Scout project isn't about the project. It's about how we can use those experiences to help youth grow. And recently, that question of how we allow youth to grow has become much bigger as I've prepared to lead a group of 9 youth in the backcountry at Philmont. So by the time this episode is published, I'll be somewhere in northern New Mexico on Philmont Scout Ranch. I'm sure I'll be sweaty, I'll be stinky, I'll be covered in dust, and I might have been saying some things under my breath about missed trails or people not doing their job right. But I'll be observing. As I prepared, I am part of a group on Facebook that's Philmont Gear Discussion or something. A lot of people, a lot of good discussion, a lot of good points, a lot of good pointers. It's actually a good place to be to prepare for Philmont. But you have to sometimes sort the wheat from the chaff. And a lot of times the wheat that you have to sort from the chaff comes around gear discussion. And I see posts where people, and I did this, where you lay out all your gear. You take a picture and go, hey, I'm preparing, my pack weighs 30 pounds with X, Y, Z, and I think I'm prepared. Any suggestions? And the responses range from those who over-prepare. Yeah, keep that. You need that. You might need that. Oh, by the way, think of adding another one of those. Or you have the ultralight backpackers, the people I envy because they can hit the trail with 12 pounds of gear, just add some food and they're ready to rock and roll. But what they fail to understand is, first, they've had years, if not decades, to perfect their ultralight packing. The over-preparers fail to understand that ounces turn into pounds, especially when you've got more gray in your beard than you do black. But those answers miss the bigger point. And the bigger point about Philmont, and I recently saw this, so it's not my words, I'm just using them, is that Philmont is a Boy Scout experience that uses backpacking. It is not a backpacking experience. And when you take a step back and you put on that 0.6 lens to get the bird's eye view, it makes sense. It makes sense because the objective of Philmont and a lot of other Boy Scout experiences, and we can throw in other youth organizations, is not to have the lightest pack and to get across the trail the fastest. It's about developing leaders. It's about developing a team. It's about the experience so that when you're a year, 5, 10, 30 years down the road, you can go back to your experience at Philmont and say, you know, I remember when we had something like this, and I didn't like my crew leader because he had me do this, but we worked it out. Or when I was a crew leader, we made this decision and I realized it was wrong. It's about developing youth. It's not about having the lightest pack. I also think that we need to take a step back, whether it's at that Eagle Scout project or at Philmont, and think who is supposed to be leading this crew. There's been some comments recently that hit me, and I've got them written down here. One that really hit me was talking about getting lost. It was from an adult leader. It says, when my crew gets off the trail by 100 yards, I pull them back. 100 yards. Well, that's, as degrees of loss go, 100 yards is not even a wrong turn. That's, I pulled in the wrong driveway, nothing big. But what do you teach them by saying, hey, you missed a turn, let's go back? Another one just happened today, and I got a little snarky. It's okay. Our trek is in 2 weeks. I have to know about the water situation. I responded, why? And this person responded, well, we have dry camps, and we might have more dry camps because it's so dry at Philmont. And I responded again, you might be right, but what can you do about it? The answer is nothing. Another one is, this one gets me because I fall solidly in the no technology for navigation camp. And it's, I have to have a GPS so I know where the trail is so my crew will not make a mistake. I have to edit myself when I respond to that one because it would not fulfill the tenets of the Boy Scout law of being courteous and kind. But the thread that holds all those together is a lack of trust in the youth. And probably more importantly, it is a lack of understanding the purpose of scouting. You think back to Sir Baden-Powell over a century ago that designed Boy Scouts in England. He wasn't making sure that they fulfilled different tasks. He was designing things to make better young men, and it's turned into tasks to make better citizens. Now, that doesn't mean that we adults abandon the youth, because as my mantra is, I'm here to make sure they don't hurt themselves. That can be said for a bunch of 9-year-old Cub Scouts, 13-year-old Boy Scouts at summer camp, or a crew at Philmont, or Sea Base, or Boundary Waters. And I think back to another line that I developed as I was talking with my fellow adult advisors for the other two crews, as we were going through a list of first aid items that were being added to crew first aid kits. And I said, there is a pretty big line between being prepared and being paranoid. And the specific discussion we had was about special splints and a tourniquet to add to our crew first aid kits. And my response was, we've got belts, we have t-shirts, and we have trekking poles. In the very extremely minuscule likelihood we need to stop massive bleeding, we got belts. And if we break a leg, we got trekking poles. The big line between being prepared and being paranoid sometimes should be a wall. So as we think about being prepared, we train, we condition. Our crews have done shakedowns, some really cool shakedowns at Hocking Hills and Randsburg and Hoosier National Forest. We try and learn the necessary skills. We understand safety. We follow the emergency procedures that Philmont has or wherever we are. But we try not to know every detail. We try not to plan for every single contingency. And probably more importantly, we don't need to eliminate surprises or prevent mistakes or the uncomfortable moment that we have on the track or at the project. We want to use those experiences for youth to learn some stuff. And not for us adults to step in and say, look at me, I'm wearing a cape and I did it better than you. So preparation gives the youth, whether it's a 4-H'er, FFA member showing their steer or pig, it gives them the tools that they need to be successful. Whereas paranoia tries to make sure they never have to use those skills. And how much sadder would our experiences be for our youth if they never had to use those skills that we want them to learn? The skills to repair the mistake they made. Oops, the clipper cut part of the leg wool off that I didn't intend to. How do we fix it? Or my pig got mites a couple weeks before the fair. What do I do? Or, man, I forgot to pack this. What do we do when you're sitting at Black Horse Canyon, miles from anywhere? So if you think about my crew, and my crew is, let's think back to my crew. My crew is my 4 people in my family, besides me. It's fair folk friends. It's all the people I work with. It's my scout troop. It's specifically crew 719K02. We train, we prepare. We do the best we can to be ready. Whether that's preparing for planting and harvest or hitting the trail at Philmont. We listen. And I love this example of my crew. I sent a lot of emails to the group, parents and youth included. And they were encouraging ones. Hey, here's some things to think about while you're packing. Sharing another leader's message. It was never you need to do this. It's, hey, think about this. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm here. And I got no feedback. And I was pretty frustrated because I sent all these messages. I had all these suggestions. I wanted to make it better for these scouts, and I got nothing. Not even a thanks. But when we did our crew pack shakeout last Sunday, and we dumped out every single piece of content of 6 scouts' backpacks, I was surprised. I was surprised because I wasn't surprised. That's contradictory, I know. I was surprised because there was nothing that was out of the ordinary. There was no contraband. Miles didn't have a big old pack of candy in his backpack. They had listened to my emails, to our meetings, to our shakedown. They listened. They absorbed. We allowed them to pack their own pack. And guess what? They did a pretty darn good job. That made me feel better about my role as the advisor. It is to make sure they don't get hurt, to make sure that everything is in place so they have a good experience. I am not the youth crew leader, and my job is to not steal the experience from them. So in closing, adults usually interfere for good reason. It's because we care. We have experience. And we can see problems coming. Because our experiences through life allow us to see something coming faster or a solution that's better just because we've been there. But the question is not, could I do better? The question needs to be, who needs to be doing this? Who needs to be reading the map? Who needs to be clipping that lamb's head? Who needs to be making sure that that tail is just right on that steer? Who needs to be screwing that screw in that Eagle Scout project? And when we're at 10x zoom, looking in at the project, you know who needs to step in? It's me. Yep, because I know how to fix that problem. We're going to get taken care of. We're going to go to the next thing. Because I could screw the screw better, I could fit that animal better, and the project will get done faster because I'm zoomed in on what needs to be fixed. But when we step back and we take that panorama picture, the answer changes because the question changes. Are we trying to make the moment perfect, or are we trying to help the young person become capable at handling the next moment when we probably aren't there? There are moments where I didn't step back and ask that question, but I'm trying to be better about it. So my challenge to me and to everyone out there that's an adult, maybe knowing when not to tell them is a better answer. And my final thought, if we never give young people enough room to struggle, decide, lead, and occasionally get it wrong, we shouldn't be surprised when they reach adulthood without knowing how to struggle, decide, lead, and occasionally get it wrong.